Today, I'm excited to have another guest, somebody who's been a friend for years and is a partner in business, and somebody that I truly believe helps our clients in one of the biggest financial investments of their lives, and that's helping us get to the settlement table for our clients when they're buying and selling real estate. So excited to introduce our audience here today to Travis Martz with Title Nation. Travis, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you having me. This beautiful downtown Berlin location. It's my first time here, and the artwork on the wall is quite spectacular. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's I can't believe this is actually the first time we've had you in here. We do have a good little spot here, and similar to what you've had in Annapolis, with your downtown location. But yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Where would you like me to start? Do you want me to give me a little bit of a background?
Yeah, absolutely. So for our audience here, Travis is an attorney, and he is also the attorney who heads up Title Nation, which is one of our partners on the real estate side here, and wanted to get you in and just kind of give us a little bit of a background as to how you got into this business, what you do on a day-to-day, and then what I really want to do for our clients here is kind of walk them through the steps of what it looks like once they go under contract and the whole title process to ultimately get to the settlement table.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned, I am an attorney practicing in Annapolis, Maryland. We have our headquarters in Annapolis, Maryland. In that space, I am an attorney with law firm Kagan, Stern, Marinello & Beard, which is primarily a business litigation firm that does a lot of employment law matters, but at the same time, we have a robust business transactional practice, and we have a robust real estate transactional practice, and I oversee the real estate transactional practice. Through that sphere of law, about 13 years ago, I opened up what is our real estate settlement office. We are exclusively affiliated with Kagan, Stern, Marinello & Beard, but we do handle real estate transactions across the state of Maryland, and primarily the majority of our business has now taken us down to the shore, primarily from Anne Arundel County, spanning down to Worcester County and all the way up into Delaware. We have recently gotten licensed in West Virginia as well, but that's a sort of a slow rollout.
Right.
So Title Nation has its headquarters in Annapolis, and we are have been working down here with you all and with a number of agents for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's been a sort of an exciting venture, especially as the transition, as we see a lot of younger buyers coming into the beach areas, and it's fun to see those families taking over the market down here as well.
Yeah. Well, a lot of our clients are coming right from your home, home turf there. So many of our folks, and kind of originate in that greater Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Annapolis, Anne Arundel County area. So, you yourself are very familiar with the beach.
Yeah, so. Sure. Yeah, it's very helpful to have offices and staff on both sides of the bridge to be able to connect dots. Most of our sellers now, as you know, when they're done with the beach, they're done with the beach. Right. All the furniture stays in the location, and they are more than happy to not make that trip down to the beach areas to sign settlement documents. And oftentimes they've already relocated to places down south, and we're able to send mobile notaries down to them to make sure the transition and the settlement process is as efficient as possible. We live in a society where if we want to be together and have kumbaya closings, we can do that. If we want to do it remote and send notaries and whatnot out to their location, we're happy to do that as well.
Right. So you mentioned 13 years. When you were going to law school and in thinking about your career, did you ever envision that it would take you down more of the real estate path, or were you thinking something different?
Yeah, great question. I've always been personally geared towards real estate from a sort of a personal growing up with my father, walking through homes during the new construction phase, and then also myself personally being interested in real estate acquisition, real estate investing. I've always had that bug in terms of the legal sphere. Interestingly enough, I was out at the International Council of Shopping Centers convention, which is the largest convention that they have in Las Vegas, about 15 years ago, and they've got this party for all of Maryland, and the party for all of Maryland was being sponsored by a commercial title company based in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. And I thought to myself, if this organization can be the presenting sponsor for the largest party at the International Council of Shopping Centers convention, it's something that I may want to get into. So that's what made me get interested in the title insurance world. And we've had a steady stream of business and established and professional relationships with individuals like yourself for a while, which has sustained us.
Right. So for our clients that, we have a little bit of everybody. We have first-time home buyers all the way up to seasoned investors, and then first-time second home buyers. And, so we see a little bit of everything. But maybe you can kind of start us off here with a little bit, like, what is your role in the transaction, and why does somebody need title insurance? Why does somebody need an attorney to either be at settlement or not be at settlement? I know it's loaded.
No, it's great. Thanks, Ryan. It's interesting because I've always felt that the role of the title agent, the attorney within the process, is to make all parties look like heroes at the settlement table, right? Because most people don't understand what a title agent does. Mm-hmm. Most people don't understand what title insurance is outside of the fact that their mortgage lender requires them to get it. And most people don't have any relationship with a particular title insurance agency.
Right.
So they're relying specifically on the advice of their real estate agent professional, perhaps their lender. But frankly, we are outside of the contract, we are involved in the entire process from ratification to the day of settlement.
Right.
While we may not be the most stressful part because we don't handle the aspect of securing a mortgage, we work aggressively with the lender to make sure that all of the sort of financial arrangements are clear and that the communication with the client, our mutual client, you as the agent, me as the title agent, are well communicated well and ahead of closing so that the transition is clean. Because we all know as real estate professionals that we deal with this on a regular basis. But the way that I instruct my team is to think about every single person that we're dealing with, whether they're a first-time home buyer, whether they're a second home buyer, or whether they're a wholesaler who flips homes multiple times a year. The closing process can be stressful, and communication is the key. And the communication needs to start from the real estate agent to the lender to the closing agent, the title agency. And so long as we all have that sort of communication bandwidth in step, it's going to be a seamless process for our clients. Right.
So you're getting the contract typically, like you said, from a referral standpoint, whether it's coming from an agent, whether it's coming from a lender. You now get that contract, and then what does it look like from there? Like, as agents, I'm talking to the client all the time, and we're going through like home inspections. We're looking at condo documents. We're talking about maybe the utilities that need to be changed or what furniture is included. But we kind of stay away from that title piece, and that's all you. So what does it look like on your end at that point?
After we get a ratified contract from the real estate agent, that is going to be the individual, as you stated, that's likely referring that contract over to us to move into the title processing situation. Once we get that contract sent over to us, we automatically open a file in our system. We currently use a system called Qualia. Qualia is a technology platform. It's a software which will help collect data for us, put the data into the right documents, and help us process the deal from start to finish. So it's really important for our clients to understand the fact that technology is a very important part of the title process. And if we have clients that are not as in tune to our current technological forward society, then that needs to be clear up front, because we are more than happy to reach out and make sure that we have customers that don't use email as much as we would like. And I understand it. There can be a lot of emails coming at you that can be intimidating. We are more than happy to do some more of the hand holding, but from the very start, we use a platform called Qualia to reach out to our clients to make sure that they're sending in all of the relevant information, whether it be scans of driver's licenses, whether it be collecting information for insurance purposes on buying a new home, whether it be homeowners insurance information, whether it be payoff information on seller side. That's where the process starts. And it's very important to make sure that we have a relationship with the real estate agents so that they understand that the data collection starts from the very beginning, and it's through our Qualia software package.
Okay. So then emails are going out to the agents that are involved. Emails are going out to the clients that are involved. They're completing the data securely online,
right.
Through the secure technology platform.
Right.
And then what happens next?
So we're generally following a timeline. And the timeline is set by the settlement date that the parties identify on the contract. Now, while that date can move based on situations that can involve home inspections or financing issues, that timeline is what my title agent individuals will base their collection of data and preparation of documents by that settlement date. So hypothetically, we get a contract in our system today on what's March 12th, 13th,
yep.
And we set May 1 as a settlement date. In our system, we will put May 1 in that date, and we will be collecting data all along through that process. Our system will be reaching out to clients and asking them for data along certain timeline guidelines. First, we'll ask for driver's license information. We'll ask for date of birth information. And then it might be quiet for a while because at that point, we're waiting for the individual to secure all their information with their lender. And at that point, we're working with the lender to make sure that we get all of the information regarding the type of mortgage that they will be acquiring. And all that information goes into our closing disclosure, which will get sent out to clients about 3 days before closing.
Got it. So you're collecting all this data, while at the same time, at some point, there is a trigger, a mechanism that you will then begin to start actually researching the property. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah, thank you for taking me back a step. Upon getting the initial contract, we will then order a title search, and that title search will do a 60-year history look back as to what any type of issues that may be impacting the legal ability to pass clear title. And when I say pass clear title, we are going to take a title and give it from the seller to the buyer without any mortgages, without any sort of financial encumbrances that may attach to that property, so the buyer knows that the title that they're getting will be clear, and any other issues that any other financial encumbrances that they may apply to that title will happen after closing, and they will not be holding any of the burden or responsibility that may have been at the fault of the seller.
Got it. So that includes, so say you're buying a house, right? That includes, what we think of like the home itself, but also before that, possibly if it was in that 60-year period, the land. Yeah,
we are actually, the American Land Title Association is the national association for title agents. There's also a Maryland Land Title Association. But what we are, in fact, insuring is the land. Everything that has been erected on top of the land, that is all handled by the home insurance that the client, that the buyer gets prior to settlement. But what we are insuring is that the land, which is really the most valuable part of the transaction.
Right.
If you go back and look in Maryland tax records, you'll always see there's an assessed value for the land, and then there's an assessed value for the structure or the improvements. And the house is the improvement. And that's typically not worth as much as the physical land.
Right. Location.
Yeah, right.
You can't move the land,
yeah.
Right? So that's the piece, right? Okay. So then you're researching it, making sure if there are any kind of liens or any encumbrances or anything that comes up, you are reviewing it to ensure that that's not going to cloud the title in any way, or you're going to be able to clear that title and pass the clear title onto the new buyer at time of closing. How does that come into play, especially down here at the beach, where in Ocean City we've got 10 miles of condos, and I always think about this too. We'll start with the condo piece, but then say there's like a boat slip or something. There's some sort of amenity that maybe is loosely tied to the deed or the title. How does that come into play?
It's a great question, and it's really interesting because many condo associations handle it differently. And sometimes the buyer will think that they are getting a specific slip in the marina attached to the condo association that is part of their deed. And other times, condo associations think otherwise,
right,
that it's a first come, first served type of situation. So that's really that's a case by case basis. But for the most part, if in fact we can tie a specific slip to a specific legal description in a specific deed, especially when the buyer is paying property tax,
right,
we are going to do that and memorialize that in the deed. But it's a case by case basis down here, but it's something that a seasoned title agency who's done properties down here for the last 5 or 6 20 years should be familiar with.
Right. Yeah, it's always, and we even see that, as agents, we're looking through the multiple listing and we have listings, and I see it all the time. It kind of comes through different ways. Like somebody will refer to it as a deeded boat slip, which I, was always told that's a no-no. You don't necessarily say deeded because it's not like it has a separate deed. But the best case scenario in a lot of cases is it's kind of worked into the deed as a limited common element, or it's exclusive right to use for that particular unit. But that all comes up. That would come up when you're researching title, I would imagine.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay.
So what happens is that we'll order a title abstract upon getting a ratified contract. We will then order a 60-year history of the land, which would include any type of additions, such as a boat slip. I will then, as counsel, review the 60-year title history and note any potential encumbrances or problematic issues that we need to make sure are cleared prior to closing. Once I give that title abstract the thumbs up, at that point, we will tell our title insurance underwriter that we feel clear issuing a title insurance policy to the buyer at the time of settlement.
Got it. So you're researching it, making sure it's clear, and then the assurance piece to it, moving forward, the peace of mind for the buyer.
The commitment, the title commitment.
Yes. Okay, that's where that comes into play.
Yes, the title commitment will go to the lender, and then at the settlement, we will issue a policy to the buyer, basically letting the buyer know that we have done a 60-year search on this property, and we are issuing you free and clear title. However, there are certain unknown issues that can arise that the seller may not have known about, that the title company may not know about, that somebody, whether it be a forgotten heir in an estate issue, whether it be a forged deed, these are all the issues that the title insurance policy will protect the buyer on.
Got it. So it's just so you have it right, and I want to make sure I understand it, and then we can help our clients. But clear title. The assurance by having some insurance is something that would come into play at time of closing. Now, is that an optional piece? Is that required? How does that come into play?
If you have a mortgage, it is required.
Okay.
The lender will require you to get lender's title insurance. Lender's title insurance covers the lender for the amount of the mortgage that they have on the property. It's self-explanatory.
Right.
The owner's policy is, in fact, an optional title insurance issue that you can get to supplement your lender's policy. The owner's title insurance will cover the delta between whatever the remaining mortgage is and how much the home was originally purchased for. When you get a lender's title insurance policy, the owner's title insurance policy is a minimal cost. And then there are 2 tiers to owner's insurance policy. Every underwriter has a basic tier and an enhanced tier, but those are the optional choices for the client at the time of closing.
Got it. So the lender's protecting themselves.
Absolutely.
And
they're requiring
100% required.
You can't get a mortgage unless you get lender's title insurance.
Got it. And then it's a bit of a roll in the dice if you don't protect your own investment.
That's right.
So if you're putting, I mean, especially here, in a resort market, we're putting 20%, 30%, 40, 50, sometimes 50% down. It's a higher cash down payments that we're seeing. So the protection of your initial investment would be protected through the owner's title insurance policy over and above the lenders.
Yeah, that's right. And the beautiful thing about the owner's title insurance policy is that it pays for your legal fees. And you really don't know which path some of these title issues, whether it be a boundary line dispute or whether it be a disgruntled son who maybe forged a mother's signature on a deed, can get. And as the legal entanglements get messy, legal fees get messy.
Right.
And title insurance will pay for the legal fees. And that in and of itself is peace of mind.
Got it. Well, what I see all the time, is so many of the properties that we have been in the family for years, right? So that seems like that's a good thing. They haven't traded or changed hands as much. But when they do go to sell, depending on the stage of life, that some of these sellers are in, they've owned them for a while, but the sale might now be going to an estate, a trust. Somebody might have passed. We have a few people that want to sell, a few people that don't. And I start to think about how that could affect things when you need multiple people to sign off on the deed or sign off on the sale, and how that could affect things a few years down the road if there could be title issues that would come up. So I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, I myself have always gotten title insurance, and I always recommend it to my clients for that reason. Any other stories that you have that have come up over the years, where title insurance came into play and protected a buyer, or was something that we had to consider, before you could go to closing?
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah.
We have not had any clients that have had to file a claim because of some type of miss that we had in our review, and we had to issue a policy, and my insurance underwriter had to pay out a claim because of something that we may have missed. Knock on wood, I don't have any horror stories in that regard. But I can tell you that from a prior legal experience, we had an issue, and I got to remember if I can get this right. We had an issue in Annapolis where the seller had an IRS lien, and the IRS lien does not automatically attach to the property, but it was an encumbrance that the title company didn't pick up on. Mm-hmm. The title company, what they asked for was just a letter from the IRS stating that this particular issue on this tax obligation was satisfied. And the IRS issued the letter. It was provided to the title company. The title company closed. And the seller, who's now living down in Florida, said, well, look, the IRS issued me this letter stating that I had paid this portion of my tax obligation, and the IRS letter was actually not completely factual, and the lien, which didn't show at the time, still attached to the property, and the title insurance underwriter had to pay for that. So there's certain, again, it's very finicky, but at the same time, when you're dealing with likely the largest investment that you're ever going to have, it's a no-brainer to have that peace of mind.
Right. Here's a question that I have for you, and I just don't know the answer to it. But when somebody settles on the property and they did obtain both, just say it's an owner's title policy. Say they paid cash and they decided to go out and get an owner's title policy for the whole purchase, and then what would they need to do? What would that new owner need to do to have protection moving forward? Do they need to keep a copy of that title insurance policy? Is that something you keep a copy of for down the road? How does that work?
Yeah, everything, as you know now, is double and triple stored somewhere. We provide a policy to the owner at the time of closing, the same way that we provide a copy of the deed and a copy of all of those other contracts. What they choose to do with that, I don't know. But we have all of that information securely stored in our internal databases. At the same time, the underwriter will have a copy of that policy as well. So you can do one of two things if you don't know where your policy is. You can look and you can look up your deed, which is electronically stored on, if you're in Maryland, it would be marylandlandrecords.net. You will have a stamp on that deed as to who prepared it. You can certainly call that individual and get a copy of your title insurance policy, or you can find out who the underwriter is and call the underwriter and get a copy of that policy. So if you ever need it, there are 3 or 4 places that you can go to get a copy of it. And if you need to file a claim at any point, there are instructions on that title insurance policy as to who to call to get that claim process started.
Got it. Okay. So that's the kind of the assurance. I kind of jumped out here. We went into the title insurance piece for a bit, but as far as if staying in line with those timelines,
sure.
The initial contract submitted to you,
sure.
you order the title abstract. We're going through. You're contacting the buyers, the sellers, the agents that are involved, and everybody gets very close to settlement. What happens at that point? Say we're 10 days out. What does it look like on your schedule at that point?
Sure, right. As mentioned earlier, we take pride in having the buyer have the cleanest closing process and the most efficient closing process logistically for them as we can. Through COVID, we obviously realized that many people want to do things in different environments now. And we will certainly inquire with every client as to whether or not they would like to sign together at a mutual location, whether the buyer and the seller want to sign at 2 different locations. And we spend a significant amount of time, especially because most people now want to sign in 2 different locations. Right. So that's double the logistics for my team. And we're happy to do it because we know that it makes all parties feel the most comfortable. And at the end of the day, we're looking for a positive relationship at the very end of the transaction. And we're looking for word of mouth, because word of mouth in every industry is invaluable.
Right.
So what we do leading up to the 10 days before closing is that we make sure that all parties are fully aware of where they may be going for closing. If it's a seller, we may be sending them the documentations. We may be sending a notary to their home in Florida. We may be sending them a FedEx label, having them meet with a notary at their house in Florida, and FedExing us the documents back the next day. If it is a buyer who is located in Annapolis, Maryland, who is purchasing a property in Ocean City, Maryland, we are more than happy to accommodate them at a signing on the west side of the bridge, or have settlement agents meet them at your office, for example, down on Coastal Highway.
Right.
Logistics is kind of where we sort of spend the last 10 days. The last 3 days before closing, especially if there's a loan involved, that's when we're working very aggressively with the lender, because the lender has to get out the closing disclosure 3 days prior to the closing date for it to close. And so we want to make sure that all of the numbers are properly placed, that the lender has gotten the loan through underwriting so that the loan disclosure can be issued 3 days prior to closing, and we can all keep on track with that 3-day settlement window.
Got it. So you guys are working together, coordinating the final numbers, getting it onto a settlement sheet. At what point does it go to the client? So like, say, I get this question from time to time. Mm-hmm. When will we know what we need to bring to the settlement table, or when will we know the amount we need to wire, and how does that look? So, I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
Yeah, no. We would like to know that. That's a great question. If it's a cash purchase, we can provide that information and provide that to the customer 2 weeks or so outside of the anticipated settlement date. Mm-hmm. Down here, us getting final figures is largely dependent on communication with condo associations, and their management organizations, and understanding what level of assessments may be needed to collect. to get final numbers. If it is a situation where we have a mortgage, you know as well as I do, sometimes, unfortunately, we don't have those final numbers because we're waiting on the lender to provide us those final figures, whether it be lender's fees and final disclosures, usually 3 days before closing.
Got
It can be frustrating, but that's when there's a lender involved. That's really the best advice to tell our mutual client that 3 days before closing is when they should be able to expect the amount that they would need to bring to closing on that date.
Is it safe to say, though, that the lender themselves probably has given the buyer a pretty good idea as to what they're going to need to bring to the table prior to that? I mean, they're getting their initial disclosures when it comes to, like, this is what you're going to need.
They do. They give them a preliminary disclosure, and it certainly would be advantageous for the buyer to sort of anticipate a buffer up or down, up obviously,
right,
as to what they may need to have set aside for closing date.
Yeah. Yeah. So once those numbers are actually put together and you got final numbers and you're able to get those to the buyer and or give the final numbers to the seller, what does that look like? I mean, how does that come through? How is that communicated to the buyer?
We always transmit wire instructions through our secure technology platform.
Yep.
Because there is multiple ways in which the individual needs to be verified. You and I both know that cyber fraud is a very scary and real thing in the real estate industry. And we always instruct our clients to only access our wire instructions, my escrow wire instructions, through the secure technology platform. And we ask them to send their wire instructions, particularly for sellers, when we need to remit the proceeds from the closing to them. We want to also receive their wire instructions through the secure technology platform. If in fact the wire instructions come through a personal email, we will then double verify them. We will double verify them with the bank, and we will also double verify them with the customer before we transmit any wire.
Got it. So that's really where they need to focus. It's going to come through an electronic, your Qualia type system is where the instructions are going to come through. They're going to get notification. And at that point, once they have the final numbers that they need to wire, they're going to their bank. They're having a conversation with their bank. They're providing them with that access information. Typically, they're working with us because we're going to, at that point, make sure that the final walkthrough is happening about an hour prior to settlement or thereabouts if it's happening locally. They're transferring over utilities. What utilities do you transfer on your end versus what the consumer needs to, or the buyer needs to do?
We don't transfer any utilities. What happens is once we record the deed, the deed automatically gets updated into the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, and at that point, the county will then transfer all of the water billing.
Right. So
when especially in Ocean City, we need to stamp it with the town of Ocean City first before they send it to the county, and they'll then update the water billing on that side.
Right. So they don't need to be calling the water company or the sewer company. That's all going to happen as the deed gets passed through and gets stamped.
That's right. We do update information with the condo associations. We'll provide them. We'll provide the condo associations with updated contact information for the new buyers, and we will also, remit insurance payments on behalf of the buyers as well that we collect at closing.
Got it. So it's the big day. We've gotten through the whole process, which can be exhausting at sometimes. We try to make all of us involved. We're trying to make it as smooth as possible. You're doing a great job to get it smooth. So, I mean, not only do you handle the title insurance and you handle making sure that there's no liens, but you also really coordinate the most important piece, which is the actual signing. So what does that look like the day of closing?
Again, it goes back to logistically what is the best for all the parties in the transaction. And as I stated earlier, most individuals want to do separate signings, which is fine. And we're happy to coordinate separate signings. And what we will do is we have licensed settlement officers who are also notaries. We'll go and we will coordinate the signing at either will either be at perhaps it's the new home. After a successful walkthrough, everybody's giddy and nobody wants to leave that home. We will send a licensed officer to that house to conduct the signing. If all parties decide that they want to go back to the broker's office and they want to sip on champagne, we're certainly happy to partake in those festivities as well. Because buying a home, no matter how troublesome the process may or may not have been, is still a momentous and exciting time. And we would love to help participate in that sort of celebration. Once all the documents have been properly signed, sometimes we have to make sure that the documents are verified by the mortgage institution until we can actually issue proceeds to the seller. So we verify that all the documents are properly signed. We will then take them and we will run them up through the lender. The lender will then verify that the notaries have all been properly signed, the dates have been properly signed, all the I's are properly dotted and the T's are crossed. We also will get a limited power of attorney in our documents. This is getting a little bit too into the weeds, but the limited power of attorney will give us authority to cross a T if we have to or dot an I if we have to, so that we don't need to chase down any party somewhere else down the line. And once we get the approval from the lender that everything looks good, we will then initiate the disbursement, meaning we will send the seller their proceeds, and we will then get the deed that was signed by the seller, transferring ownership from the sellers to the buyers. We will then get that recorded in county land records on behalf of the buyer.
Got it. So just before we record that deed, everything is signed, everything is verified. Now you are going to hit send. Essentially, you're releasing dispersing the funds to the seller.
Correct.
So the seller at that point is getting paid. Agents are getting paid. Lenders, everybody's getting notified.
All coming through our escrow account. Yes.
Got it. So you're the hub for all of that as well.
Right.
Okay, this is a question I get a lot, and we're sitting there, we're going through it. It's an exciting time. They're a lot of times signing. They're getting ready to grab those keys, but then they do ask, all right, so how are we going to get copies of everything we sign? And I know there's a form on there that they can say they want it electronically. They can get mailed copies. How does that typically go down?
Yes, you're exactly right. In our closing packet, we do include a specific provision asking for physical copies, electronic copies. If in fact it is electronic copies, once we get all of the documents from the buyers and the documents from the sellers, we will then pair them together, make an electronic copy for our file, which gets stored in our Qualia software system, and then we will then electronically send a copy to all parties or print out and physically mail a copy to all parties. But we also retain a copy. We get questions all the time, particularly now, where individuals are doing their taxes.
Got it.
And They have misplaced their settlement statements and they need them for tax purposes. So we have all those electronically stored in our system as well too, for duplicative reasons.
Got it. And so settlement's essentially complete. The keys have been transferred. Everybody's happy. They're sipping the champagne. They're going about their ways. The seller's getting their money. You're still not done. Kind of behind the scenes thing, that's probably one of the most important pieces you mentioned a few minutes ago, but that's actually the recording.
The post-closing process.
Right. So what does that look like?
Yeah, the post-closing process is essentially taking the completed signed document, breaking it down into parts, and if you have a mortgage document, which in Maryland we call a deed of trust, we will then have to overnight the recorded mortgage document to the lender. We have the deed. The deed will then get recorded with the county in which the property is located. And what happens now, this happened through COVID, is that everything is now electronically filed. So pre-COVID, we would walk into the courts and take a wet signature. When I say wet signature, I mean the blue or black ink. And we would walk it through. It would get stamped. And then we would have a stamped recorded deed, which then we could mail back to clients if they like. Now everything's done electronically. We take a wet signature deed, we scan it, we send it in through the land records, they stamp it, and a copy of the deed is made available online. We can also send clients a copy of the deed as well. One thing we talked about earlier that I think is important to bring up is that every buyer, in Maryland at least, will get a pesky letter from a business entity saying, your deed has been legally recorded for $118, $120. We can send you a copy of that. that is I don't necessarily want to call it a scam. It is a business that is trolling business land records, finding out as deeds are recorded that they can make a copy of them and send them to clients for a fee when the client can certainly go online and request it from us for free.
Got it. So you got to watch out. Everybody's out there to make a buck, and you never know what you're getting these days. But so that letter could come from this third party. Be careful of that. But especially the new buyer, they're going to get a copy of everything they signed, including the deed.
They will. Yeah. At closing, we always provide a copy of the unsigned deed in their closing packet that they take with them. We give them a copy of the insurance policy. We give them a copy of the deed to take with them. The original deed is what the seller signs. We take that back with us so that we can get that recorded.
And does anybody get a copy of that afterwards? Do you mail a copy of that? Do you send that out?
Yeah, if the buyer wants a copy of the wet ink deed, we can mail that to them. Mostly individuals are perfectly fine because the original signed deed doesn't have that stamp, that court stamp that people like, because we scan it and send it in to them now. So the document that's actually stamped by the courthouse is a copy. And that's the one that obviously makes people feel most comfortable because they know it's officially been recorded.
Got it. How long does that recording process take? I guess it's county by county.
Yeah, county by county. Yeah, but the electronic provision has made it fairly quick. I'd say less than 2 weeks most of the time.
Got it. So that's kind of walking through the entire process there. A lot of times, when I'm working with buyers, we don't necessarily get into, all the ins and outs. So this is a great kind of course as to what they could expect. Let me ask you this before I let you go. Is there any other services? So you do Maryland, Delaware settlements from a real estate side. If somebody needs a deed amended, quitclaim deed, any of those legal services, do you provide any of that?
We do. We do a lot of deed modifications, adding names, removing names, perhaps pursuant to separation agreements. We do a lot of driveway maintenance agreements or utility easements. Anything that is real property transactional related, Title Nation and the law office will handle that work.
Okay. What's the best way to reach you if our clients want to reach out to you? Obviously, we're going to refer Travis to you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I guess the best way would be direct line is 410-777-5494. That goes right to my desk. I would be answering that call. 410-777-5494. And the email would be Martz, M-A-R-T-Z, at Kagan, K-A-G-A-N, Stern, S-T-E-R-N.com.
And we'll link it up here below, too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So everybody has access. Anything else I'm missing, Travis?
I think we're good. I think we got fairly deep.
Yeah,
and maybe confusing at times, but it's a lot to sift through.
We don't want to confuse anybody, but I do know that I've got clients who are very detail-oriented and want to know what that process looks like ahead of time, and I think this is a good preview. So,
okay, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming here. If you guys like this information, please share it with a friend. Anybody who's going through the real estate process, title process, wants know a little bit more, please share it with them. Like, subscribe, and we'll be back here next week with another edition of the Running Real Estate Podcast. Thanks again, Travis.
Yep, thank you, Ryan.